Today is the fact that progressive Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has died, and everybody is going off on how, you know, the Republicans shouldn't nominate, you should wait for the next election. In the past, the Republicans had said that they were going to wait till the next election, let the people decide. Now they're saying, no, it's different. The difference then, of course, was they held the Senate but not the presidency, and the president wanted to nominate and the Senate did not, and that's well within the way it works. And their excuse is this time is why they don't want the people to decide is because they have the president and the Senate. So every time in history it's been done. And even though I think they're all full of crap, their argument is actually sound. But let's go ahead and talk about that right after this. All right, we are back, and make sure, like the little video said, you subscribe, click the bell, share, all that kind of stuff, so we can spread these videos far and wide. But anyway, here is what, this is from the Washington Post. This is a montage of the Republicans then, under the Obama administration, when they wanted to wait till after the election, when of course Trump won, and now when they want to do it now, some would say just in case Trump lost. So here we go. Let's watch this.
When I was laid off from my job, it was absolutely terrifying.
This is a free video curriculum that can teach anyone basic digital skills. When you lift up one person, you lift up the entire community.
Google.
The American people are about to weigh in.
The campaign is already underway.
And voters are going to get to weigh in.
It's about the principle.
You don't do this in an election year.
The American people will choose.
Let the American people consider it as part of deciding who to support in November.
That was when Democrat Barack Obama was in the White House. Now many of the same senators you just saw are saying, don't wait. President Trump should get to choose Ginsburg's successor immediately.
We've got a situation, you just played a quote from me in 2016. We can play that game all day long where you can play a quote from Chuck Schumer saying you've got to confirm the nominee.
I don't disagree with that. That's what I'm just trying to get you to concede. This is really about who has the votes and who has the power at any given time, right?
So no, actually it isn't.
Here's what you said at that time.
In a few short months, we will have a new president and new senators who can consider the next justice with the full faith of the American people.
Now, Garland was nominated 9 months before the election, and you were saying then, 9 months before the election, it was wrong to deny voters a chance to weigh in. So if it was wrong then, 9 months before the election, why is it okay now, 6 weeks before the election?
So, Chris, in 2014, the American people elected a Republican majority of the Senate to put the brakes on President Obama's judicial nominations. In 2018, we had a referendum on this question. Just a month before the 2018 midterms, we had the vote on Justice Kavanaugh. There could not have been a clearer mandate because the American people didn't just re-elect Republicans, they expanded our majority.
If you look at history, if you actually look at what the precedent is, this has happened 29 times.
29 times, Chuck. There have been vacancies in the year of a presidential election.
Now, presidents have made nominations all 29 times. That's what presidents do.
If the shoe were on the other foot and the Democrats had the White House and the Senate, they would right now be trying to confirm another member of the Supreme Court.
You don't see any hypocrisy between that position then and this position now?
Chris, the Senate majority is performing our constitutional duty and fulfilling the mandate that the voters gave us.
You guys have this new explanation. Never once on the Senate floor, when election is just months away in 2016, you said the people should be allowed to consider possible Supreme Court nominees as one factor in deciding who they'll support for president. This shouldn't even really be controversial. Then you said this is not about the person, it's about the principle involved, and I want to give the American people a voice in this. Republicans have said there should not be a bitter political fight. We have called on the president to spare the country this fight. The best way to avoid the fight is to agree to let the people decide. Senator, these are your words. Not once did you say, oh, it depends on what party the Senate holds versus the party of the president. This just sounds like a power grab, pure and simple.
Well, it is the Biden rule, and this is the way, this is the precedent of the country. You haven't had...
There's no Biden rule.
Everyone knows that if the president were Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton and Chuck Schumer were the majority leader, the odds are 100%. 100%. There's no universe in which Nancy Pelosi would not have been the previous speaker saying, we are going to confirm this seat.
Yep. That would have happened. Yeah, yeah, about that whole thing. Yeah, I agree that, oh, and of course Clinton said they were hypocritical. Now, at worst case scenario, they are hypocritical. But let me refresh that. Get rid of that video. But at the same time, they have good points. You know, this has been done 29 times in the past. It comes across as hypocritical, sure, because of what they said back then, and there is a difference. So hate on me if you want, but there is a difference. I also want to go over how Ginsburg's death could reshape the presidential campaign. Now, I will say this, if you check here, Biden is 8 points ahead of Trump. But then again, 2016 showed us that polls don't matter. Hillary was ahead on almost every poll, and she lost. But this is something to take into consideration. Democrats are gleeful, but they need to really think about this. But how could this change? Well, a presidential campaign that was already tugging at the nation's most searing divides has been jolted by the death of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, potentially reshaping the election at a moment when some Americans were beginning to cast ballots. For months, excuse me, the contest has largely centered on President Donald Trump's handling of the coronavirus, the biggest public health crisis in a century that has badly damaged his prospects for re-election as the U.S. death toll nears 200,000 people. But in a flash, Ginsburg's death on Friday added new weight to the election, with the potential that Trump or his Democratic challenger Joe Biden could pick a successor who could decide abortion access, environmental regulations, and the power of the presidency for a generation to come. Goes on to say, with early voting underway in 5 states and Election Day just over 6 weeks away, wow, 6 weeks, Democrats and Republicans were largely unified late Friday in praising Ginsburg as a leading legal thinker. Now look, whether you agree with her or not, and I don't, I think a lot of what she believed in was wrong. A lot of her decisions were wrong. Some of them were good. Some of them were right. But she was a leading legal thinker. Just like Antonin Scalia. You know, whether you liked them or not, you have to admit that they really, truly thought about it. They weren't just like, humdrum, la la la, let me vote what I'm supposed to because I'm a conservative or I'm a progressive or whatever. But anyway, so, and she was an advocate for women's rights, but strategists in both parties also seized on the moment to find an advantage. Facing the prospect of losing both the White House and the Senate, some Republicans viewed the Supreme Court vacancy as one of the few avenues remaining for Trump to galvanize supporters beyond his most loyal core supporters, particularly suburban women who have abandoned the GOP in recent years. It's hard to see how this doesn't help Trump politically, said veteran Republican strategist Alex Constant. Biden wants this election to be a referendum on Trump. Now it's going to be a referendum on whether he nominates, on whoever he nominates to the Supreme Court. So, really interesting there. The article that I showed you the video from was about how Senator Lisa Murkowski says she doesn't support filling Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat before the election. And Susan Collins also says she doesn't believe in that. But they've always been the liberals in the Republican Party. Now, from what I understand, I could be wrong, if Mitt Romney goes with Murkowski and Collins and votes against Trump's nomination for Supreme Court, then I think from what I understand, I'd have to double check this is going to be a tie. And if it's a tie, then that would mean Mike Pence would decide it. So, you know, some Republicans worry that if Trump does this, it's going to make things ratchet up worse than all the riots and protests and things. There's going to be more of that. Some Republicans fear that it's going to drive Democrats and liberals and progressives to vote for Biden, who would have normally, a lot of progressives were saying they were going to vote for the Green Party, Howie something, I don't remember. Anyway, so it's hard to see what could happen, or it could galvanize Trump's base and a lot of people that were kind of like, yeah, Trump's to go out and vote for him because of what he did. Now, of course, the hypocrisy. Some people say that it's hypocrisy, and the Republican senators are arguing it's really not, and they gave a reason why. So, and usually I don't agree with a lot of Republicans anymore, but I definitely agree with what they were saying about every time that 29 times that it was right before an election, they voted for the nominee. They didn't wait till the next president got it. Now, if that's just all because they were being partisan, or all because there's like, hey, it's our job, whatever. That's how it's been done. So I don't care about Senate decorum. I really don't. But and all these rules. But I do think that in this case, those guys are right. Now let's see. I refresh that. Lagoa's role in Florida will be a big factor in Trump's Supreme Court pick. Protests over Supreme Court vacancy target homes of top GOP lawmakers. Yeah, I saw a couple of videos of that. Let's see if there's a video here with this one. Let's just watch this.
Sitting here like 10 minutes in. Wow, I got like a cramp up and down my
Infomercial.
Well, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is trying to secure enough Republican votes to confirm a replacement for Justice Ginsburg, but it could be very close. Already, Senators Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski say they oppose filling the vacancy before Election Day. Tom Bevan is here. He is the founder and CEO of Real Clear Politics. So, Tom, if you do the math, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. If you do the math, you've got Murkowski and Collins, who are apparently no's. Yep. And then you come down to Cory Gardner and Mitt Romney. They're, up in the air right now. It really is going to be very, very tight. And then you have the Martha McSally race in Arizona, where if she loses to Mark Kelly, Mark Kelly could take over that position by November 30th, which changes the dynamic even further. Your thoughts?
Well, the politics of this, as you mentioned, are very, very dicey. Cory Gardner's the only one really in a competitive Senate race that hasn't announced. Obviously, Susan Collins is against, but all the other Republicans that are in tight races, Tom Tillis, Joni Ernst, have said basically that they are in favor of moving forward. So you are left with Cory Gardner and Mitt Romney. Those are the two folks that everyone's talking about. Again, McConnell can lose 3 and still have Vice President Mike Pence come in and be a tiebreaker. But again, that would be, add even more fuel to the fire in terms of this being along partisan lines.
Yeah, I want to play this soundbite from the president talking about Susan Collins and Murkowski today, and then get your thoughts on the flip side of this.
I think Susan Collins is very badly hurt by her statement yesterday, and I think Murkowski is very badly hurt, and she doesn't run for 2 years, but I think this will follow her into the beautiful, and it is a beautiful state of Alaska.
Yeah, and what do you think? Does it hurt their respective races? Does it change their respective races at all, and how they come down on this, Tom?
Well, I mean, each of these senators is making their own political calculations as to whether they, and obviously Susan Collins thinks that this is going to benefit her. But again, by coming out and making that statement, she has risked turning off all of the Trump voters the base of the Republican Party in Maine. It's a state that, especially the 2nd congressional district, that moved went for Trump in 2016. So I think the calculation that the other senators are making, as I mentioned earlier, is that it's absolutely in their interest to be on board in a presidential election year and not to risk, the ire of the base of the Republican Party by going against this. I mean, this is one of the things that Trump ran on. It's one of the things that conservatives and the base like about him. And so to not go forward with the nomination at this point, I think for most Republicans, it would be seen as a real detriment.
Right. And I want to put this on the screen. This is a Fox News poll trusting on who do you think would do a better job on Supreme Court nominations. And this one, and by the way, we should know this was September 7th through the 10th. So this, of course, preceded the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Biden leading there by 7 points, 52 to 45%. And he's arguing that we should let the voters decide who should pick the next Supreme Court justice. But then others say, look, the voters did decide. They put President Trump in office 4 years ago. They made Republican senators the majority. So voters have decided, and these people are still on the clock. Tom.
Yep.
Well, that's right. And that's, look, again, that's what Republican political candidates are basing their decisions on. And while the Democrats are suggesting that, what happened with Merrick Garland in 2016, Mitch McConnell's arguing that, when the party controls the White House and the Senate, that's the distinction. That's the difference between the two cases. Now, Democrats dismiss that, but I think as far as Republicans are concerned, there's no problem with moving forward with this nomination. But again, we don't know how the public's going to digest this and how it might affect not only the potential outcome in November 3rd, but what happens beyond that.
Yeah, and what about these calls for some conservatives saying, you know what, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh are not conservative enough? And this is a quote from Politico here. Several social conservatives said they are still recovering from a pair of stinging betrayals this summer involving 2 Republican appointees to the bench and want stronger commitments to social traditionalism before they can comfortably support the nominee Trump is expected to announce this week. So they want someone who is guaranteed to come down on the conservative side.
Yeah, I mean, both sides. I think conservatives in particular, based on the David Souter nomination, and the disappointment that they've had even recently with folks like John Roberts, always want to try and make sure that their nominees are going to be as conservative as possible. But I think the people that Trump has indicated that are on his short list, most conservatives don't have any issue with in terms of them believing that they'll be the right kind of judge in the Supreme Court.
Tom Bevan, great to see you as always. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Trace.
All right, there you have it. I'm going to do one more thing before I go. Basically, it is this story out of Virginia, where I live. Trump supporters disrupt early voting in Virginia. Basically, what happened is this group of Trump supporters right here, they were out waving flags, shouting 4 more years, stuff like that. And people said that they felt intimidated. So the people in charge of the early voting took them inside, opened up a bigger space, and gave them space. Now, according to the same people in charge of the early voting, they said that they were more than enough space from it, and they weren't blocking anything. And they weren't particularly yelling at the people or telling them how to vote, which actually you can do that kind of stuff far away, and it would be bad if they were trying to intimidate. If you go down in the story here, basically, here's the video. Play that and people could walk from it. So Democrat basically, the Democrat said it was intimidation, Brian Graham, and then Sean Rossiter, the Republican who's in charge of that area, basically said it was not intimidation at all. So, figure it out on your own. Anyway, that's been today's show. You're watching the Liberty Serf with Kirby Harris, and that's it. Bye-bye.